Have you ever felt like you're alone, even when you're surrounded by people? Have you ever felt like no one really sees you, hears you, or understands you, as if your existence is invisible even to those who claim to love you? If so, then this video is for you, because the loneliness you fear may actually be your greatest strength. Today, we are going to talk about one of the greatest paradoxes of human existence, the fact that true peace can only be found when you accept being alone. And no, one understood this better than Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most solitary and at the same time most lucid philosophers in history. In this video, we will explore the pain of loneliness, the addiction to superficial connections, the nobility of being alone, and most importantly, how solitude can become the purest form of self-knowledge, freedom, and inner power. If you are tired of being emotionally dependent on others, if you feel lost when you have no one to talk to, or if you are simply looking for deep peace, stay with me until the end. This video can change your relationship with loneliness and with yourself. Chapter 1. Loneliness as an inevitable and necessary pain. There is a kind of silence that hurts more than screams. It is the silence of absence, the one that echoes in the soul when there is no one around, not even you. For many, loneliness is that uncomfortable emptiness, a hole that seems to swallow up your days, your thoughts, and most importantly, your sense of being alive. Waking up and not having anyone to share your coffee with, coming home and hearing only the creaking of the door, lying down at night and staring at the ceiling while your mind screams questions that no one answers. This pain is real, and to deny it would be to disrespect its depth. But this is where the paradox begins. Loneliness hurts, but it is also essential. Carl Jung said that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from not being able to communicate what is important to you. And when no one around you seems able or willing to understand what is really going on inside you, it's as if you slowly cease to exist. This is why many people fear solitude so much. It forces you to face yourself without filters, without distractions, without an audience. And that hurts. It hurts to realize how much you betrayed yourself to please others. It hurts to realize how many times you kept quiet to maintain relationships that were already dead. It hurts to recognize how much of your identity was built to please, to belong or not be abandoned. But this pain, as cruel as it may seem, is the beginning of liberation, because only those who dive into the void are able to rebuild themselves completely. Schopenhauer saw solitude as the natural state of higher beings. He said, "The more intelligence a man has, the more inclined he is to solitude." And perhaps this is a difficult truth to accept, but deeply liberating. Being alone is not a punishment. It's an invitation to come home and find someone inside, someone you may have forgotten, yourself. Chapter 2. The illusion of external fulfillment. Why do we attach ourselves so much to others? From a young age, we are taught that we need others to be complete. Fairy tales, soap operas, social media, they all repeat the same message. You will only be happy when you find someone. And so we spend our lives searching for halves, as if we were incomplete by nature. But what if this constant search for the other is in fact an escape from ourselves? The truth is that many people don't love, they just distract themselves. They use relationships as anesthesia, friendships as shields, and crowds as hiding places to avoid facing the emptiness inside. Emotional dependence arises precisely there, in the desperate attempt to silence loneliness with external noise. How many of us have stayed in relationships that we knew were toxic, just to avoid being alone? How many empty conversations? How many forced laughs? How many soulless coexistences, just to avoid the mirror of silence? Nietzsche said that the man who does not know how to be alone will never be free. And it is true, because as long as you depend on the presence of another to validate your existence, you will always be chained, emotionally submissive to the fear of abandonment. The root of blind attachment is insecurity, in the idea that without someone, we are nobody. But this is a deeply rooted lie. And worse, it is a comfortable lie, because it is easier to seek someone than to seek yourself. But what if you could free yourself from this? What if, instead of chasing after someone who fulfills you, you learn to inhabit yourself completely? That's what we're going to talk about now, but before we continue, I invite you If this reflection is touching you in any way, if you feel like you need to hear truths that no one has had the courage to tell you, subscribe to the channel. This space is yours, a safe place without masks, where loneliness is not shameful, it is wisdom. Let's go together on this journey of self-knowledge and liberation. Chapter 3. Schopenhauer and the Nobility of Solitude, when being alone is a sign of strength. Arthur Schopenhauer lived much of his life alone, not for lack of options, but by choice. He saw society as a constant noise, a theater of appearances that distanced the individual from his own essence. For him, solitude was not a punishment, but a privilege reserved for those who dare to think for themselves. And he said with brutal clarity, "Loneliness is the lot of all exceptional spirits." This does not mean that we should despise human coexistence, but rather, we should understand that there is a profound difference between coexisting and depending. Schopenhauer believed that the most refined minds need solitude as an artist needs silence. It is in the void that the masterpiece of being can be created. Think about it. When you're surrounded by people all the time, how many of your thoughts are really your own? How much of your identity is authentic? And how much has been shaped to please, fit in, be accepted? The truth is that solitude reveals a kind of strength that the crowd will never allow you to discover. The strength to be whole, even when no one is looking. Because being alone requires courage. The courage to sustain your own silences. The courage to face the parts of yourself that you have always hidden. The courage to accept that true evolution happens far from the applause. And this courage, when is rare. That is why most people prefer the noise of company to the silence of conscience. Now, I want to hear from you. What was the moment in your life when loneliness taught you something valuable? Or even, what hurts you the most when you're alone? Write in the comments. It could be a line, a rant, a memory. This space is yours, and maybe what you write will help someone feel less alone today. Chapter 4. Being and being alone. The paradox. That few understand, many people confuse being alone with being lonely, but there is a subtle and immense difference between these two states. Being alone is circumstantial. It can happen because of a separation, life changes or losses. It is the moment when the outside world moves away. But being alone is existential. It is a state of consciousness, an attitude towards life. You can be surrounded by people and still feel invisible, and you can be in absolute silence and still feel deeply connected to yourself. The problem is that our culture idolizes external connection but neglects internal connection. We have learned to invest time in others, but almost never in ourselves. And so, when life confronts us with loneliness, whether by choice or imposition, we don't know what to do. We get scared, we run away, we despair. But there is something deeply liberating in recognizing that we do not need others to be whole. Yes, connections are important. We are social beings, but when that need becomes dependency, prison is born. Being alone is knowing that you are your own root. It is understanding that your peace cannot depend on the presence or absence of anyone. It is cultivating an inner life so rich, so deep, that solitude stops being a hole and becomes a garden. Søren Kierkegaard said that anguish is the vertigo of freedom. Perhaps the fear of being alone is just that. The vertigo of discovering that you can be free. Free from others, free from expectations, free from applause, free even from the need to be understood. This freedom is scary, but it is where true emotional maturity lies. Chapter 5. The Inner Reconstruction. What loneliness reveals about you. Most people try to escape loneliness like they run away from a fire, but what they don't know is that within that fire there is gold. Yes, it hurts, but it is in this pain that the truth lies, because when everything around you goes silent, you finally start to hear what is inside you, and what you find but isn't always pretty. You begin to see your insecurities, your masks, your repetitive patterns. You realize how you sought in others what you didn't know how to give to yourself: affection, validation, company. Loneliness sheds light on what you have been avoiding for years, the need to forgive yourself, to embrace yourself, to find yourself again. But that's the beauty of the process. Loneliness does not destroy you. It reveals you. And when you accept this encounter, reconstruction begins. You start to choose better. People, conversations, thoughts. You start to protect your energy like someone protecting a temple, and you finally understand that being alone is not a problem. It is the first step to living with presence, purpose, and peace. Loneliness then stops being a punishment and becomes a sanctuary. And if you felt this while listening to me, if at some point in this journey something inside you recognized itself, then leave a like. Not just as a gesture to the channel, but as a gesture to yourself. A silent yes to your own reconstruction. Because liking this video is like saying, I allow myself to be whole, even if I'm alone. Chapter 6. Peace in the presence of yourself. How to transform loneliness into self-connection. There is a moment in the journey where silence ceases to be emptiness and becomes presence. It's when you stop desperately searching outside and start building silently inside. You no longer feel loneliness as absence. Now it is space. Space to breathe, think, feel, exist. It becomes your ally, your home, your point of return. This is where self-connection begins. You begin to respect your own cycles. You learn to comfort yourself on difficult days and celebrate in silence on good days. And perhaps for the first time in your life, you feel complete without depending on anyone. Not because you rejected the world, but because you learned to be self-sufficient. And when you are self-sufficient, the love of others is no longer a necessity. It is a choice. The peace that comes from self-connection is quiet, but profound. It doesn't shout, it doesn't make a fuss, but it transforms, it heals, it reorganizes, it balances. And this doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, an internal ritual. It requires courage, time, and a lot of honesty with yourself. But when it happens, you stop being afraid of silence, because you understand that within it, you live. The silence, where you find yourself. Loneliness, which was once your greatest fear, can become your greatest strength. Because when you learn to be whole, the world no longer controls you with absence, rejection, or abandonment. You no longer beg for love, because you have learned to love yourself. You no longer depend on company, because you have learned to keep yourself company. You no longer lose yourself trying to please, because you have learned to honor yourself. The truth is that sooner or later, we will all have to go through this tunnel. The tunnel of silence, of absence, of pain. But whoever goes through it is reborn. Reborn lighter, more aware, freer, and most importantly, more at peace. If this video spoke to you, and I believe it did, then don't leave without subscribing. This channel is not about cheap self-help. It's about awakening, about courage, about truth. Here you won't find empty promises. You'll find mirrors, reflections, and a safe space to be who you are, with pain, with doubt, with soul. Click subscribe now and continue this journey with me. The next transformation begins in the next video.